Hello, chess friends, and welcome to your out of chess channel, and welcome back to the TCEC Season 23 Superfinal between the two top engines, Stockfish 15 and the Leela LCZero. So as I'm recording this video, the result is clear. Stockfish is the winner of a new TCEC season. Stockfish has now 14 points more than Leela LCZero, and there are not enough games in which Leela LCZero could catch up anymore with the Stockfish engine. So we are declaring now the Stockfish engine as the winner of the TCEC Season 23. So let's check out now one game as the ending of this beautiful season. We'll see here really again a beautiful immortal queen sacrifice by Stockfish 15 against Leela LCZero in a King's Indian defense in the so-called Bayonet attack. Be prepared. This is again chess from another dimension. So let's check out now the game. So the fish opened with the move of d4. We have knight to f6 by Leela, c4, g6, knight to c3, bishop to g7, and now after move e4, d5, d6, we have reached now the King's Indian defense. So knight to f3, we have now the normal variation, kingside castling, bishop to e2, and now comes the move e5, which is the normal move of the King's Indian defense. We're breaking now in the center of the board the small pawn chain that white has built here, so black is not tolerating this spaces that white can get with this pawn, so that's why e5 a normal idea of the King's Indian. White delays the situation in the center of the board, because if black takes now the pawn on d4, we can play knight to d4, and we can build this so-called Marozzi bind pawn structure. Look at this, we have a dominant c4 e4 pawn which is controlling the d5 square. In the near future we'll play bishop to e3, f3, queen to d2. I think this would be then the solid setup of the Marozzi bind. In the continuation after kingside castling, so that's why knight to c6 was played. Now comes d5, kicking away the knight, and now knight to e7. And you see black is rerouting now the knight to e7, which of course is now a square on the right side of the board on the king side. So black is trying now to launch this common flank attack with the move f5, f4, g5, g4. This is now the normal idea of the King's Indian. On the other hand, the white is searching for opportunities here on the queen side by playing the move b4, c5. So this is the way to go, because look at this, the small pawn chain, the e4 pawn and also the d5 pawn are showing us the direction of the attack that actually white should attack the queen side. So it's now a double-edged line, sort of an opposite side attack game. White is attacking the queen side, black is attacking the king side. Who's faster on the attack will probably win the game. So in the continuation we have b4. This is now the so-called bayonet attack. In my opinion, one of the best methods to beat this kind of a structure. If you have problems maybe to beat the King's Indian, in my opinion, the bayonet attack is the way to go. c5 you can break, then a4, a5 is coming. Okay, black will still have his fun with his kingside attack, but I think white is already very fast with this b4 move. So we have now knight to h5. The idea is clear. We want in some occasions even to occupy the square f4, and then if something takes the knight on f4, maybe the bishop, then you see the long diagonal for the dark square bishop gets opened, and also the knight on c3 could be a little bit loose, then also the rook on a1 could be a tactical problem in the continuation of the game. Rook to e1, creating a hiding square for the bishop. If knight to f4 happens, still we can play the move bishop to f1, and in the near future maybe the knight on f4 could be kicked away with some activities with g3 and similar stuff. So you still are flexible, you still have good defensive resources with this move bishop to f1. f5, now comes this main idea of the King's Indian defense. So we're trying here from black's perspective to break and enter. f4, g5, g4, h5, h4. So these are the moves that we want to play. We're creating now a pawn storm here against white on the king side. So a4, white is doing the same. White continues with the normal plan, queenside attack. Knight to f6, hitting the pawn on e4, and now a5. White is continuing the plan. White attacks for the queen side. Now h6. H6 is a prophylactic idea by black. It's not allowing some ideas of knight to g5, knight to e6. Many times in the King's Indian defense, in this bayonet attack, white occupies the square e6. Probably black is going to give up the bishop for the knight on e6, but actually the problem is, I think, in these types of structures, that your light square bishop, you see there are many pawns on dark squares, your light square bishop is many times the best minor piece in the King's Indian defense. Sometimes you even sacrifice the light square bishop on h3 or something just in order to let the position explode on the king side. So that's why with the move h6, black prevents knight to g5, knight to e6, then you have to give up your light square bishop. So in my opinion, a good move here by Leela LCZero. Although quite interesting is also this line, f takes e4. This is, I think, a drawish line which black could maybe play in order to reach somehow a draw out of this position. After F takes e4, knight to g5 would be possible, of course, hitting the pawn twice. Now black should not protect the pawn anymore. Black should play knight to f5, knight to e4. Now with knight to d4, you could have, I think, here a powerful outpost. I'm not saying this is perfect now for black, but I think if you create this kind of an outpost, this could be quite interesting. This could be quite annoying for white to handle this very powerful knight in the center of the board. So maybe also this line should be considered, I think, as a good line. Maybe this is the way to go, just in order to get the drawish line. Maybe here I found here one game in the database in which black managed to get a draw out of this position. But okay, here as we said, after move a5, h6 was played. We have now knight to d2, protecting now the pawn on e4 twice. We have king to h7, bishop to b2, rook to b8, and now bishop to f1. As we said, with the move rook to e1, we have creating now ourselves a good square for the bishop, and we're controlling for the e4 square. b6, attacking now the pawn. a6, very nice move by Stockfish 15. In the beginning, I was really surprised by this move, by the move a6. I consider maybe a takes b6 as a much better move, but look at this. When you play a takes b6 here, okay, in the near future you will eventually play the move c5, but in my opinion the attack is a little bit splashed. When you play the move a6, you still have this annoying pawn, and if something gets cleared, this could be a quite annoying pass pawn to handle. So we're at least getting some spaces with the move a6. So as I said, really interesting idea so far by the Stockfish 15 engine. So bishop to d7, rook to b1. We have now h5, an interesting also choice here by Leela LCZero. Notice many times in the King's Indian defense, the Dashko bishop on g7 is a blocked out piece. It's blocked out by this very solid pawn structure in the center of the board. Is blocked out by the e5 pawn. So that's why here Leela LCZero is searching for new opportunities, is trying to reroute the bishop on h6 and also on some other diagonals, just in order to get it active, because it doesn't do anything here on the square g7. Very nice positional play also by Leela. So we have now c5, breaking the position immediately here in the center of the board. Bishop to h6, bishop to d3, indirectly also hitting the king. We have to agree the king on h7 is not in danger now, but in the near future, if the pawns start to roll, then of course the bishop on d3 would be a powerful piece. So bishop to f4, we have queen to c2, bishop to d2, queen to d2, and now f4. Well, Leela gave up now the dark square bishop and created now a solid dark square structure. Now the bishop on h6 is not there anymore. It's not blocked out by its own pawn structure. When it was on g7, it was also blocked out by its own pawn structure. Now Leela is getting through with the move g5, g4, h4, h3. So this is now already a dangerous position also here on the king side. So we have to agree, Leela played here so far really a solid game. So we have now c takes d6. We have a c takes d6. Now b5. Very interesting move, very important move, maybe even the most important move now in the game, because many times in the Bayonet attack, we have seen also many times in Benoni structures, the d6 pawn is a vulnerable pawn, and this is the clear target now of white. Bishop to a3, and we're trying maybe to reroute the knight somehow here on c4. So bishop to a3, knight to c4, and the pawn on d6 could be very dangerous here for black. So as I said, really nice strategies here by Stockfish 15. Knight to g4, we have bishop to a3, rook to f6, we have bishop to e2, g5 by Leela LCZero. Leela is making further progress on the king side, like you're supposed to do in the King's Indian defense. Rook from e to c1, attacking now the c file, knight to g6, and now knight to d1, trying to maybe even create some batteries. Rook to c2, rook to c1, and maybe occupy here the weak c7 square. Now comes the first critical moment of the game. We have here knight to h6, and I was when I was analyzing the game at home, I was very surprised by this move by Leela LCZero. Why should anyone give up here the pawn on h5? Stockfish simply accepted the challenge and took the pawn on h5. I was very surprised. But let's see actually other opportunities. If you play, for instance, something like h4, let's see you're making further progress and you're trying maybe to play the move h3. h3 is going to happen now. You have to now retreat with the knight, and now with the move f3, and in the near future maybe rook to c6 can be also played. I think this is a beautiful square for the rook, even if you have to sacrifice maybe the exchange, but I think you could do it. Notice here after move f3, at least in this scenario, I think we have solved every defensive problem here on the king side. There is not a good breakthrough anymore for black. Black should probably maybe even sacrifice something, g4, knight to g4, bishop to g4 or something, just in order to break the position. But there is not a different way to break the position. You have to play g4. Otherwise, your attack is splashed on the king side. I think we can agree. Nothing can happen anymore on the king side. We can even play some ideas of, I don't know, maybe king to f2, king to e1, maybe getting king on d3. But I think the normal attacking idea of blacks here on the king side is not working anymore. So that's why we see here after potential h4 move and h3, we will simply kick away the knight and now play f3, and we'll have a solid structure. So that's why Leela LCZero played the move knight to h6. Let's see also other opportunities. Maybe you're playing here the move rook to c8. You're trying maybe to compete on the c file. Look at this: rook to c8, bishop to c8, rook to c1, bishop to d7, queen to c3. This is the way to go. So as we said, d6 is the main weakness. We're playing queen to c7. We attack this pawn on a7. If this pawn is also taken, notice in the middle of this video we have talked about this a6 move by Stockfish 15. Really brilliant strategy here by the fish. So in my opinion, Stockfish found a beautiful way how to defend this pawn storm that Leela LCZero created here on the king side. Really, really wild stuff. So that's why after move knight to d1, we have this idea: knight to h6, bishop to h5. But Leela found at least this attacking resource. Stockfish is now challenged by the g4 breakthrough. We have now queen to c3, again with the idea to play maybe queen to c7 and attacking further the d6 pawn. Rook to c8, queen to e1. We have rook to a8, rook to b3, trying of course to play rook to c3, rook to c7, but also this rook to b3 is controlling further the f3 square. This is now very important. If f3 happens, then at least we have many pieces that are protecting the square. We have king to g7, f3 by Stockfish, g takes f3, bishop to f3. Okay, again I'm pointing out this is not maybe the optimal bishop here, but at least Stockfish found a solid way how to defend this position, how to keep the position compact. We have rook to f7, knight to b2, and with the clear idea of course to play something like knight to c4 and hitting the pawn on d6. King to g8, knight to c4, rook to g7, getting the rook where already the king is, so attacking the g file is now a very important attacking idea here for black. Knight to d6, so you see, in my opinion, when you lose this d6 pawn in the king's in defense, the game is over. Although still there are many moves that have to be played, but if you lose this pawn, I think the whole position is falling apart. I was for a long time really a King's Indian player, and I was always annoyed when I got too much pressure around the square d6. From this point on, I think this game is simply a one-way ticket. So here in the continuation, knight to h4, queen to f1, attacking, protecting the bishop. We have queen to f6, rook to c7. You see the position is getting destroyed now by some beautiful activities of whites. Rook to c7, king to h8, rook to b2, queen to g5, knight to c4. Again, also attacking now the e5 pawn. Look how this pawn chain is falling apart when the d6 is taken. Now the e5 is weak. Maybe in the later stage we can also take out the pawn on f4. The bishop is going to be rerouted here on this diagonal, so it's now a devastating game here for black. So bishop to h3, we have rook to g7. Stockfish undermines the pressure here on the king side. King to g7, rook to f2, keeping everything glued together and compact. We have now knight to f7, bishop to e3, to rook to h8, and now finally bishop to b2, attacking now the pawn on e5. There are also maybe in the later stage some opportunities of rook to f4, because after queen to f4, you couldn't take out with the pawn because of this beautiful activity by the dark square bishop. So we have knight to g6, knight to d2, bishop to d7, knight to f3. So Stockfish rerouted really the knight in a beautiful way. It has now a good defender in front of the king, but continues still the pressure on the square e5. So you see the knight fits here really in a good way, like in this Tetris game that I used to play when I was younger. It's really perfect, again, a piece for this perfect square. So in the continuation, we have now queen to e7, we have queen to c1, rook to c8, queen to d2, and now after rook to, king to g8, we have now d6. This was a beautiful choice here by Stockfish 15. this was a simplifying move. For instance, if you take out now with the queen, you get queen to d6, and now after knight to d6, this pawn is weak. Knight to e5, bishop to e5 is going to happen. The bishop on d7 is weak. Then the f4 is falling apart, so it's now a game over for black. So you could also take out now, instead of this pawn with the, you could also take out with the knight, but then with bishop to h3 you get pinned, and there's not a good way anymore to protect this position. So that's why after move d6 we have queen to f6, h3, bishop to e6, d7. We have now rook to d8, queen to c3, attacking now the pawn, rook to d7, and now h4. h4 is the preparation to play the move h5, deflecting this knight from the square e5, and finally take out the pawn and go into a favorable endgame. So we have here rook to d8, we have now h5, and now comes the critical moment of the game here. LCZero played rook to c8, attacking the queen, but you can guess what happened. Stockfish simply ignored this simple threat sort of by LCZero, played simply h takes g6, rook to c3, Stockfish takes another piece with a check, very important, you have to react, and now after bishop to c3, Stockfish gained the rook and 2 minor pieces for the queen, and this was now this position, in my opinion, completely winning, especially because of the fact that you have still this weakness here on e5. So we have queen to c7, bishop to e5, now a check, bishop to f1, nothing special. Here we have bishop to d7, and now king to h2. You cannot still take out the pawn on b5 because the bishop is protecting that. Stockfish got out of this first rank mess that could have been created because there was this beautiful pin by the queen against the bishop. So Stockfish gets out of the range, the rook is protecting the bishop, and here it's a solid game now again for Stockfish 15. The idea is clear what we're trying to do here in this particular endgame. We want to take out this pawn, and notice now the a6 would be then the most important pawn that could create a promotion here. So we have bishop to g4, bishop to d4, queen to c7, king to g1, queen to d6, bishop to e5, attacking the queen, and now also this pawn was hanging, bishop to f4. We have taken this very important structure now. Queen to e4, knight to e5, we have bishop to e6, knight to c6, attacking now finally the pawn on a7, bishop to c4, bishop to c4, queen to c4, bishop to e3. There are many occasions, even some opportunities, maybe even to sacrifice the bishop after a takes b6 to let this pawn roll, and we can create maybe a promotion. So this is also a tactic that should be considered. So queen to e4, bishop to d4, queen to b1, a check, not a problem. We have now queen to d3. If you play now queen to b5, then knight to e7 is going to happen. You have to play somewhere maybe king to h7, and now with rook to f7, as we said, we can here create really some madness. You can get even checkmated by these 3 pieces. So really this is also something that should be considered in this particular game. So after move rook to f1, we have queen to d3, knight to f7, we have king to h7, rook to f7. Now comes again the same idea. We have here king to h2. You cannot of course take here queen to d4 because you get a beautiful fork on f5. So that's why here Leela played king to h5, rook to g7. We have here queen to d2, trying to just keep the game somehow, trying to make some kind of a perpetual or something. So this is not possible. So in the continuation, we have now knight to c6, queen to f4, we have rook to g3, queen to d6, bishop to e3, king to h4, and now after bishop to g5, the king has to step back, and finally here Stockfish took this very important pawn. We have queen to b8, now again knight to c6, pushing the pawn further. LCZero sacrificed the queen just to prolong the game somehow. We have queen to c6, b4, we have queen to e6, king to g7, bishop to f6, and after queen to h3, the game was over. It was a winning game here for Stockfish 15. So great game, I think, in the King's Indian Bayonet attack. I was really surprised in the beginning, first of all, with this move a6, but you saw how Stockfish built the attack around the square d6. When the d6 pawn was taken, the whole position fell apart. Okay, black has always some opportunities on the king side. You have to be careful, but Stockfish found also good defensive strategies on that side of the board, created this cool defensive setup. Leela C0 never got the opportunity to attack the position, and this was simply brilliant play by the fish. So, okay, congratulations again for the developers of this beautiful Stockfish engine. Stockfish wins a new TCEC season. Stockfish won now every tournament that Stockfish played. It's a pure domination now by the fish. Again, congratulations. As I said, if you want to see more brutal attacking games like this, check out our commented chess games played by computer series with some more games played by Stockfish, AlphaZero, LeelaZero, Dragon Engine, and many more. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what to say, chess is the best, of course.